Scott Summers, also known as Cyclops, is one of the most enduring and complicated characters of the X-Men. First introduced in X-Men issue number 1 in 1963, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Cyclops is often depicted as the leader of the X-Men. His power sets contain an optic blast, which are both one of his greatest strengths and a lifelong curse. Scott's story has always been about control, controlling his powers, his emotions, and his responsibilities. Trained by Professor Charles Xavier, he became a model student, loyal, stoic, and burdened by duty. But over time, that loyalty fractured. As the mutant struggle evolved, so did Scott, transforming from the teacher's pet into a revolutionary leader, challenging Xavier's ideals and redefining what it means to fight for mutant struggles. Whether viewed as a hero, martyr, or even a villain, Cyclops represents the gray area of leadership in the X-Men universe. He might not be the flashiest or loudest mutant, but he always bears down the weight of making the impossible decisions, making him Marvel's most tragic and fascinating character. Scott's father, Christopher Summers, was a U.S. Air Force pilot. When Scott was a child, his family contained of Christopher, Catherine, his mother, and his brother, Alex Havoc, which is also another mutant. They were flying in a private plane when it was attacked by the Shi'ar spaceship. To save his sons, Christopher gave them the only working parachute, pushing them out of the plane before it exploded. Scott and Alex survived but were separated after the landing. Scott suffered a head injury that damaged his ability to control his optic blast, and the two boys were sent into an orphanage. Meanwhile, Christopher was captured by the Shi'ar and taken into space, where he became Corsair, leader of the Starjammers, a group of space pirates. Years later, Scott found out the truth, that his father didn't die in the crash, but had in fact survived and had been fighting for freedom among the stars. This new revelation added more complexity to Scott's character, a character driven by discipline, abandonment, and loss. The fact that his father lived a life without him was soul-crushing. When the two characters reunited, it was a bittersweet moment, but it was filled with resentment and admiration, knowing that the two had lost a lot of time together. As Cyclops grew older, his senses of duty hardened. His relationship with Jean Grey, the love of his life, became an emotional anchor of his story, and one of the greatest sources of pain. When Jean died and later was resurrected, Scott was forced to navigate grief, guilt, and the impossible expectations of leadership. He became colder, more pragmatic, and willing to make morally ambitious choices if it meant ensuring mutant survival. In his grief, Scott tried to move on, which led to one of the most controversial chapters of his life, his relationship with Madeline Pryor. Madeline, a woman who looked identical to Jean, gave Scott a second opportunity in having a normal life. Together, they got married and had a son, Nathaniel Summers, also known as Cable. When Jean was found alive, Scott abandoned Madeline and his son, a decision that would later haunt him. Madeline's heartbreak and rage consumed her, twisting her into the Goblin Queen, manipulated by sinister forces that preyed on her pain. Her descendant into darkness forced Scott to face the consequences of his actions, that even his attempts to do what felt right often left devastation in their wake. The loss of Madeline and the separation from his son deepened his inner conflict. Nathan, infected with techno-organic virus as an infant, had to be sent to the future to survive. When he eventually returned as Cable, a battle-hardened soldier from a dystopian future, their relationship became a reflection of everything Scott had sacrificed: his humanity, his family, and his innocence. Under writers like Grant Morrison and later Jonathan Hickman, Cyclops evolved into something more than just Professor X's protege. He became an ideological successor and his greatest challenger. He led the mutant kind through crises like House of N, Messiah Complex, and Avengers vs. X-Men, where his decisions blurred the line between savior and tyrant. To some, he was an embodiment of mutant perseverance. To others, a cautionary tale of what happens when conviction turns into obsession. In the modern Krakow era, Cyclops has finally found something resembling peace. As one of the architects of a mutant nation, he's no longer just Xavier's student or Magneto's rival. He is his own man, leading not out of obligation, but one out of belief in a new future for his people. After a lifetime of struggle, loss, and impossible choices, Scott Summers stands not as a tragic hero, but a symbol of resilience. The man who opened his eyes to the world's cruelty and still chose to fight for something better. Through every loss, betrayal, and sacrifice, one thing stays consistent with Scott's character: the idea that leadership comes with sacrifice. Scott's always the man who is in charge and holds on the line, not because he wants to, but because someone has to do it. His character isn't defined by glory, but instead by endurance. If Professor X represents Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of peaceful coexistence, and Magneto embodies Malcolm X's call for self-determination, then Cyclops stands as the generation that inherited both ideals and was forced to reconcile with the reality. Raised under Xavier's hopeful vision, yet hardened by decades of loss and persecution, Scott Summers becomes the pragmatic evolution of mutant leadership. A man who believes in the dream, but understands he can't survive without strength. He embodies the tension between idealism and necessity, peace and power. The voice of a movement that has seen too much to remain naive, yet refuses to abandon hope entirely. In this way, Cyclops mirrors the post-civil rights generation, those who took the philosophy of their predecessors and reshaped them into strategies for survival in a world that never stops resisting change.